In this video, we're going to talk about the peripheral nervous system. This is the sensory and motor neurons connecting the central nervous system, that is CNS, to the rest of the body. Oftentimes, we also call the peripheral nervous system the PNS. We abbreviate it because we're too lazy to write that whole thing all the time. So if a neuron is not in the brain or spinal cord, because that's what makes up the central nervous system, that would mean it is part of the peripheral nervous system. There are a couple of divisions you need to know in the peripheral nervous system. You have the first division, which is between the somatic and the autonomic components. I'm going to focus on the somatic first. So the somatic peripheral nervous system is the body's skeletal muscles. These are going to be the voluntary muscles. For the most part, this is what you can choose to move. On occasion, a reflex will play a part in it, but in the end, these are muscles that are voluntary. You are choosing to do them. In the somatic peripheral nervous system, you have a division between the sensory pathway and the motor pathway. The sensory pathway are the neurons that go to the central nervous system. The motor pathway are the neurons that come from the central nervous system. So sensory neurons and motor neurons, which are two of the types of neurons, are both in the somatic peripheral nervous system. For example, if you are walking barefoot in your living room and you step on a tack, that is going to seriously hurt and you are going to probably jump because of the pain. That is the somatic peripheral nervous system at play. It is the sensory pathway that sends the signals to your spinal cord that you are stepping on those tacks. And it is the motor pathway that sends a signal from your spinal cord to your foot saying, well, then why don't you move off of it? That is going to be the somatic. Technically, it's a reflex, but it's voluntary muscles. It's your skeletal muscles that are playing a part, saying ouch and move, and it is always going to go sensory pathway to motor pathway. You don't move your foot before you feel it. You need to feel it and then respond to that sensation. So it goes sensory pathway to the central nervous system, that would be in the middle here, to the motor pathway. That is one component of the peripheral nervous system. The other main division besides somatic is autonomic. Your autonomic peripheral nervous system controls the glands and muscles of the internal organs. This is going to be more involuntary things. For example, your heart beating. You don't get to decide if your heart beats or not. It's just going to do it. That is going to fall into the autonomic peripheral nervous system. Or your diaphragm moving. It just sort of happens, it is going to be autonomic. Your lungs expanding and contracting, that is going to be autonomic. Your stomach digesting food. You don't have to think to get your stomach muscles to contract. It just happens. That's autonomic, automatic peripheral nervous system. There is also a division in the autonomic peripheral nervous system. This division is between sympathetic and parasympathetic. For the sympathetic and the parasympathetic autonomic peripheral nervous system, the difference has to do with what excites you and what relaxes you. This is the part of the body that is responsible for the fight or flight response, and then what calms you down after fight or flight. The easiest way to tell these two apart is to just look at the titles. Which one of these would you assume comes first? Most people accurately assume sympathetic comes before parasympathetic. And you need to freak out before you can chill out. So the sympathetic autonomic peripheral nervous system is in charge of the fight or flight or how you arouse the body. And the parasympathetic is in charge of how you calm the body. The sympathetic autonomic peripheral nervous system is what would be triggered for fight or flight. It is what is going to increase your heart rate, get your blood flowing to your critical organs, The parasympathetic system is going to be in charge of calming you down and in charge of the functions that occur when you're calm. For example, digestion, or if you were going to have things connected to reproduction, like ovulation in women. That is sympathetic. There's no reason to digest a meal if you're about to die, run away from the predator, and then worry about digesting your last meal. So the sympathetic part is in control of you surviving, and the parasympathetic is in charge of you relaxing and then taking care of your bodily needs when you know you're not about to die. Those are the big distinctions that you need to know in the peripheral nervous system: somatic and autonomic. And again, look at the titles, and that really helps you. Autonomic sounds like automatic, and so the involuntary automatic things, you freaking out if someone jumps out from behind a corner and you digesting your meal, are going to be autonomic, automatic. You moving your hand, moving your foot, those sorts of things are going to be voluntary, and thus those are part of the somatic peripheral nervous system.